but he said something to the effect of, Joseph Smith, I will never leave you, or I'll never deny you or the church or whatever. And it said that Joseph looked at him and says, brother, you don't know what you will do.
You are listening to Saints in the South. All right, welcome. This is season 2, episode 65. We are Saints in the South, representing saints everywhere, and we are your source for gospel growth and good times. Don't forget, go ahead and do that subscribing out there on YouTube and any of the podcast platforms. We have recently been added to Pandora. So if you utilize Pandora, check us out there. All right, well, we hope everyone has had a wonderful Easter and enjoyed General Conference. But this week, we are in sections 30 through 36. The title of it is, You Are Called to Preach My Gospel. So, Andrew, what we got here?
So here we are in September 1830, a few months after the church is organized, and you got a catalog, 30 through 36, a catalog of all these new converts, new to the church. And all of a sudden, they're called to preach the gospel. Oliver Cowdery is what I would call the first mission president. He's kind of overlooking these missionaries, new converts, and they're called to preach to the Lamanites. And we'll learn today, and as time goes on, that they find more success in their journey versus their destination to the Lamanites. So
the church is organized.
That's right.
And now it's time to grow it.
I mean, and it's right away, right?
Yep.
I mean, the Lord's like, all right, it's time to get started.
Let's do it.
You know, it's not like, hey, let's take a few months off and reflect on what we've done. It's like, hey, let's
balls
get
rolling.
to it. Let's get to it.
Right.
It's that stone that's cut out of the mountain without hands, and it's rolling. Here we go.
Rough stone rolling.
Well, so I thought I would start out with the scripture. It's actually in section 35, but to kind of on that topic there, 35:13. Wherefore I call upon the weak things of the world, those who are unlearned and despised, to thresh the nations by the power of my spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lord doesn't wait for his missionaries to become extremely learned, to learn all there is about the gospel and everything. He relies on the Spirit. The Spirit is what does the teaching. So, and we see that here.
And it points out, nobody had been a member more than 6 months. And some of them were still in the weeks period when they were called. And that, could you imagine today? Could you imagine saying, dry off, you got some stuff to do? I just think, in a lot of ways, I think it's a blessing for them because they didn't have a ton of other baggage to talk them out of it.
Right.
Like, if this is how we're operating, let's just keep moving forward. But I also think that's incredibly intimidating. Like, brand new gospel, brand new everything. One of my big fears in sharing the gospel is I never feel like I've studied enough, because you can't. There's so many aspects of the gospel, and these folks don't even have like, here's the first discussion. It's not that. It's like, you see a person, do you want to know about the restoration?
Right.
I actually thought a lot about in our day, members who are converted, and then within that, after that year has passed, where they've received the Melchizedek priesthood, or in sister cases where they just go to the temple after that year. But I thought of your husband Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's right after a year. I mean, he was gone and was called to serve in Chile. So that's
I like what it says in the manual. It says, if you know enough to accept the restored gospel by baptism, you know enough to share it with others.
Yep.
That's pretty much what happened. It was like, okay, you accepted it. Now go tell people.
That's right.
It's like just what you know. And
we actually see today, the scripture still applies to us, members of the church. You got to think these people who are called as bishops and didn't go to bishop school.
Right.
These missionaries, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I mean, they go, 2 months, 1 month? Right. I mean, so it's still, Lord works very well with humble and willing people.
And I've always been the type, I always think about callings, like when you receive callings, to me, it always feels like the calling is 80% for me and 20% for everyone else. That's what it feels like. I know that we're called to serve people, and that's what it's all about. But honestly, if I'm called as an elders quorum president or a counselor in the bishopric or whatever it is, I feel like, okay, the Lord's trying to shape me here. You know, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot. It's not that, oh, I need you to be an elders quorum president because you know everything about being an elders quorum president. It's not that. It's never that, I don't think. Not especially in my life. It's always, hey, you're going to be an elder quorum president because I need you to become something better.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you need some work and you need some help and here's some responsibility. Those things are a lot for us. You know, that changed these people when they went on these missions. They became great people that did a lot of great things. Yes, some of them fell away, some of them did this and that, but it was all part of making them something bigger and something better. So
that's good.
And I think one thing we can do in the church because of that knowledge, everything you said, I kept thinking, how many times have we been annoyed at someone who's called and they're not doing it right?
Right,
I'm like, well,
exactly.
They're fresh. They're brand new. They have their own style. I see the former bishop over here smiling at my comment.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think we've all been a little guilty, but once you've been in the position of leadership, which no one, I know so few people that actually aspire to that. The people that aspire to it, I'm sorry that I don't want to be women's president again. I do, but there's so many things that I'm like, I could do without the parent phone calls. I could do without all of those things, because someone always thinks you're doing it wrong. And I think these guys going out into the world so fresh into the gospel, I mean, they probably were rather unfettered by that because no one could tell them they were doing it wrong yet.
Exactly.
That's true.
So section 30, we talk about the oldest members of the church, the Whitmer guys.
Right.
You know, we got old Peter Whitmer Jr., David Whitmer, and
John
Whitmer.
Yep.
Yeah, John Whitmer.
Yep.
Only one of them stayed active as years went on.
Which one was that? David?
I believe it was
no, wait.
Peter Whitmer. Peter Whitmer.
Peter.
Yeah, he doesn't lead the church, but
you know, it's funny because it starts right off the bat with David. It says that the Lord tells him straight up, "You feared man and have not relied on me for strength as you ought." I mean, this is like right out of the gate, you know, behold, I say unto you, David, you know, it's like, wow. Okay. But you got to think, this is David Whitmer. He's one of the three witnesses, right? He's seen an angel. He's, you know, and so he's handled the plates. He's had some, he's a special witness, right? And yet, when his brother-in-law, remember Hiram Page?
Yeah, Hiram Page
started having the revelations. David Whitmer was one of the first ones to jump on board with him and say, hey, that's, you know, let's go with this. You know, it sounds right to me, you know? And so the Lord's telling him like, hey, watch yourself, like pay attention, you know, stay on track here. You know, don't get sidetracked.
It gets a little worldly there in verse 2, things of the earth, you know, getting worldly.
I love that. I love the things of the earth thing. You know, don't keep your mind on the things of the earth. And it's kind of like that comment. I can't remember. I think Gordon Hinckley was talking about Emma Smith when the Lord told Emma Smith, like, don't worry about things of the world, you know, the worldly things, like keep your mind on the things of God. And some people want to look at that and go, okay, I'm just going to forget my job. I'm going to forget worrying about school. I'm just going to focus on the Lord. I want to drop everything and just go on a mission. And it's like, the Lord doesn't really require us to do that at this time. You know, I want to just be a young women's president or whatever and not have to worry about anything else. That would be great. I mean, obviously drop everything else in the world, but the Lord's just saying, you know, hey, think eternally, you know, don't think so. What's the word?
Myopically.
Yeah. Like right in the moment, right now. Think about the future. Think about the eternal perspective of things. And there's a quote by H. Wallace Goddard, PhD. I don't know who that is, but this is where I got it from. But he says, when we are more godly, few things bother us. And I was like, makes sense, because you keep an eternal perspective. It helps you understand things better. You know, and that's not always easy to do, but I think if we do that, we'll be better off.
I was thinking when you were talking, I'm going to say the word wrong, asceticism, like where you are in such a period of self-denial all the time. Like you don't salt your food, or I know in other religions, they have people ascetics, right? And they just give up absolutely everything, but they have almost
sackcloth and ashes.
Yes.
I mean, basically
24/7 self-denial, almost always in a constant state of fast. And I'm like, I also think when you dive into an extreme, you're going to start seeing a lot of problems too, because you're so closely focused, like what you're saying, being so myopic on the church that anyone not living how you live is doing it wrong.
Exactly.
You can't love someone if you're not giving everything, 11% tithing, things like that. Like, or that person looks like they smiled during the sacrament. How dare they? Are they not concentrating?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I think you get in a lot of trouble because you're so worried about such strict lines that there's no space for actually growing and loving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. You can definitely be extreme on both sides of the spectrum. I think it's
balance.
You got to have some balance.
Right.
You know?
So here we are in section 31. Thomas B. Marsh is actually a big key player at the beginning. He actually was a 14-year-old to begin with. He was like a 14-year-old boy living in New England area, I believe Massachusetts, and he ran away. So he kind of was on his own for years, started his family, and he heard about this golden Bible that was being printed. So he went to Palmyra, and he was wanting it, but it wasn't fully out yet. So he got a few pages they let him have, and he brought it home to his wife, and they were converted and ended up joining the church. And then this revelation here in section 31, Joseph Smith gives to Thomas B. Marsh. And, he, come to find out, he left the church later, but then came back. But he was originally the president of the Quorum of the 12. We could have easily be wearing hats and shirts, football teams of TMU. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a gifted speaker. And in this section, we'll learn about how, he needs to, where's it at? Anyway, be patient because, come to find out he got upset with leaders. He ended up partially leaving because of his wife. They said claimed stealing some milk strippings or something from a cow.
Yeah, did something.
Strippings from a agreement on sharing milk.
Yeah, so he didn't, trying to hold, have integrity there for his wife there. So but come to find out, he just was very prideful and didn't cancel to this section. Yeah. He honestly didn't for some of it as time went on. But again, he did come back.
Well, I wrote this actually, Thomas B. Marsh. That's what I really enjoyed studying for this lesson. And I wrote down, he's the Darth Vader of the Doctrine and Covenants. Because if you are a fan of Star Wars fandom, what do we know about Darth Vader? He's the chosen one, and he brought balance to the Force.
Right. Yeah.
But so he started out really great at the beginning, and then he got very prideful, killed a bunch of Padawans, and made some really bad choices.
Thomas Marsh, I don't know if he killed anybody. But you know what I'm saying.
The dark side, and what does he do at the end? He brings balance. He comes back.
Yeah. He gets full fellowship.
Error of his ways. And I think that's such a neat thing for each and every single one of us is it is never too late to choose the right. Does Thomas B. Marsh probably regret the time away? Absolutely. Right. But the fact that he came back, we are a society, we love a comeback story. We love hearing like, and this guy broke his leg and still finished the Boston Marathon. Yeah, right. We eat that stuff up. Do we look at that in the scriptures with the same light? Do we say, because I read so much about, I feel in a lot of ways, Thomas Marsh was a chosen one because of his early beginnings he just gravitated to the gospel. He was searching for it. He said he told a local minister, I think a new church is going to come with the truth I'm searching for. He knew, he had felt that spiritual prompting, and he was so instrumental. There's a verse that calls him, he'll be a physician to the church. And I think that's so neat that, we don't know what that means, but did he bring healing to the church because of his works? And so the more we read, and then the milk strippings incidents, which I hate that's almost the first thing you think of with Thomas B. Marsh, right? Right. But then I was thinking, what's the psychology behind his leaving? Like, I really went into this deep, and Thomas and I were going through it too. My husband, Thomas B. Marsh appeared to me.
I know. I had the same thought. I mean,
my husband, Thomas.
Knew who you were talking about, but that thought came to my mind. I thought, what if Thomas really came to her?
Right. Well,
it's like, wow, here
we go. Got weirder than you ever could.
But anyway, bring it back. Here we go.
But I was thinking so much about what is our perfect storm to leave the church, because he was doing everything. He absolutely got prideful. I was thinking about when you are trying to be as active as possible, how easy is it to get burned out? And I think it's really easy when it's you and the same person cleaning up chairs every week. Right. If it's you and the same people trying to get so many things going. I feel like, to me, that's my perfect storm. Like, I've had many moments where I've left activities angry. I'm like, okay, well, I spent 2 hours in the kitchen doing dishes, and the same people said, well, I got to get into one prime example. I was in a Stake Relief Society presidency about 5 years ago, and we had a dessert night before the broadcast, and everyone left and people walked by me doing dishes. And I'm not saying I'm so amazing, but I can't see a stack of dishes and leave. I'm like, well, we're going to go listen to the broadcast. And I kind of had this moment of, that's fine. I'll be in here.
Yeah, right.
Who else is doing this?
Yeah.
So I missed pretty much the whole broadcast doing dishes. And I went home and I was so mad. I'm like, this could have been a cool moment for me. And I didn't get to hear anything. And I was just fuming in the kitchen, which is my personal problem. That was me. Like, what should I have done differently? Maybe left it, maybe prayed, maybe stopped hating people in my mind.
Threw the dishes in the trash.
Like why?
Yeah.
But I think of people that have left, are they emotionally overextended even though they have a testimony? How easy is that for us to happen? Like, what unresolved thing are we carrying around that can be the breaking point? And maybe that for him, he was like, I'm trying so hard. It's hard to get along with everyone at church all the time. It's impossible. You have your church nemesis. Everyone does. Don't look away from the camera.
Yeah, right.
Everyone has someone that's like, I want to do 100% for the gospel. But when that person is there, it's really hard for me. Yeah. Maybe that's, I feel like.
I think that's a good thing to do is to know that, to look into these things. You think about the milk strippings things and all that, and you think, oh, that's what we always hear. And I think it's important to look at those things and go, just like you're saying, what is our milk strippings? You know, what, first of all, none of us should be, thinking that, oh, I have such a great testimony. I mean, this is Thomas B. Marsh. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever reach his stature where he was, in the church at the time. I mean, as far as like, the things that he had to do and the things he was called upon and, things, and as close to the prophet as he was and things like that. But what I'm getting to is none of us are safe, no matter what we do. I mean, even us cool kids right here doing this podcast, we're still at risk of, we could fall away. And so I love the story, and I love the story so much I can't get the names right. I know it was Joseph Smith and someone, but remember there was a meeting or something. Joseph Smith was sitting there at the table, and there was another guy, and I can't remember who it was, but he said something to the effect of, Joseph Smith, I will never leave you, or I'll never deny you or the church or whatever. And it said that Joseph looked at him and says, brother, you don't know what you will do. In other words, just keep striving, keep doing good, but don't ever say, I'll never leave the church. I'll never, and so we have to be careful. We learn from these things. Thomas B. Marsh taught us a really great lesson if we'll pay attention like you're doing and look at it and analyze it and apply it to our lives, so.
I want to say, Jackson, what's the most important part of your workout? Just, what do you think?
Looking in the mirror.
I feel like this.
I mean, you can give the wrong answer. Go ahead.
The stretching and the cool down.
Along that same line, the rest day, right? You cannot perform well, and I find, because of the way I've got my workout scheduled, I always overdo it because I get really into it. I'm excited. I don't want to miss a day. And I have to tell myself, missing a day is how you're going to do better tomorrow. And not saying we should back off on our church responsibilities, but we need to back off to the point where we're giving other people opportunity to serve. Because sometimes we act like, well, they're going to do it wrong, so I have to do everything. We have to, and I've had that attitude. We have to get rid of that attitude. We have to be like, not everything hinges on me in the gospel. If burnout is terrible. It's awful. You can't perform well. But why we have the Sabbath, why we have a day of rest. If we choose to rest as the Lord wants us to rest, we'll be able to have the ability to serve more later.
Yeah. How about if you rest every day?
I was gonna say, me and Andrew's got the rest days down. We've got the rest days down on workouts.
And then you guys should be killing it at church, right?
I mean, we got that down.
So verse 12, with y'all talking about Thomas Marsh, he has the warning here: pray always lest you enter into temptation and lose your reward. So that phrase there, enter into temptation, is very interesting to me because everyone is tempted. Even Christ himself was tempted. But the word there, enter into temptation. So basically the door is opened when you are tempted, and then you choose whether to enter in or not.
I like that. Yeah.
And I'm sure Uncle Andrew over here, he'll probably do like a little history on Thomas B. Marsh. I don't know if that's his plan or what, but there's really cool. Thomas B. Marsh does go into detail about how he fell away. and what he felt as he fell away and how it sort of the process happened, which that's another thing I love about Thomas B. Marsh. He's like, open book. This is what happened. Watch out. You know what I mean? That's what I get from Thomas B. Marsh. You know, it's like, and like I say, he was rebaptized and all that.
People welcomed him back. Like read that verse or the paragraph, like, and everyone said, "Come on back."
Yeah, I mean,
that's also on us as bystanders to these things we see happen. Do we carry a grudge against someone who's messed up?
Exactly.
Are we completely ignoring our own complicity in messing up? We all mess up.
Right.
He did say, you know, I think he was gone for about 19 years. He did say, the Lord could get along very well without me, and he has lost nothing by my falling out of the ranks. But oh, what have I lost?
Yeah, I love that.
So powerful.
So, yeah.
I also like the fact that he was willing to go to hell with his wife, though. I mean, he was standing by her.
Yeah.
And he was, and that's why, I mean, he was basically taking her word.
Well,
for it.
Could you imagine being in that? It's like a rock and a hard place.
Right.
I mean, it really is. I mean, you know, the sanctity of marriage, the loyalty to your wife. I don't know that he was even there when the whole situation went down.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
So then it's
taking her
word, you know, and he's like, I've got to support, you know, she's saying this. I can't just say, oh, Joseph said this. So sorry, honey.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? What would have happened at that point? Perhaps divorce. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I'm glad I wasn't part of that.
That's what I'm saying.
Like one of those, like, because if Thomas had made that choice, I always choose my spouse. We choose the gospel together.
Right.
When one of those spokes on the wheel isn't there, I don't know. I don't know how I'd react.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, we don't know what happened. A lot of speculation on paper, the little story that you read about the milk strippings or whatever. It's very like, wow, what an idiot. You know, why would they do that?
Right.
There's a lot more to that.
The humanity of these people adds so many layers to the story we don't consider.
Absolutely.
It must have been a boring week if it went all the way up to the first presidency and they were talking about
probably had other stuff ahead of that.
2 or 3 councils for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everybody was on a mission.
Yeah, so. I guess so. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that became such a big deal. It seems like, but you know, hey, I mean, it was Thomas B. Marsh. It was the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles.
Yeah.
He's up there. I mean,
he would have been would have led the church afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, and Jackson, how many times when you were bishop did really small things cause big problems in your ward?
So
Andrew over here has the answer.
No, so Andrew served as my counselor. Andrew served as my counselor for 3 or 4, 3.5, or several years.
3.5. Yeah.
Do you remember what I would always say?
Don't answer the phone. I would say that.
If we could only
something
you don't remember.
You say it. You say something.
it.
If you can only worry about spiritual stuff or
if all we had to focus on was growing the gospel.
Right.
Everything would be great. But most of the time you're putting out fires, you're doing stuff and everything. So
babysitting emotions.
That's right. Yeah.
Another reason I'll never be bishop, because I do not have patience for other people's emotions. I don't babysit them. That's why I have no friends either. So we can talk about that in another episode.
That's episode 57.
Deep dive into Heidi Simpson's psychological patterns. Can I say something that is not related to this, but I meant to say a lot earlier? I was listening to Elder Garrett Gong, October 2020. At the same time, I was studying about the missionary work. And as we have these handful of missionaries who are just fresh as can be in the gospel, today, members of the Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints live in 196 nations and territories with 3,446 church stakes in 90 of them. We represent both geographic breadth and centers of strength. In 1823, who would have imagined that in the year 2020, there would be 3 countries easily with more than 1 million members of this church: the United States, Mexico, and Brazil, or 23 countries, each with more than 100,000 members of the church, 3 in North America, 14 in Central and South America, 1 in Europe, 4 in Asia, and 1 in Africa. And as I was listening to this talk last week, it just made me think how missionary work is truly the epitome of the loaves and the fishes.
Absolutely.
And I don't think it was a coincidence I listened to this talk last week, but these guys had no idea. They had no concept of other countries, I'm sure. They're like, let's go to the next town to be a missionary. Or like, when they finally got to England, that's a huge deal. And now we're absolutely everywhere.
Yeah, they thought it was a big deal when they went to Kansas.
Yeah.
And isn't that where you
I am not from Kansas.
Yeah, that's from Missouri, Kansas. Yeah, that's right, Kansas City, Missouri.
That's right.
Yes, thank you for the distinction.
So section 32, we get to we're introduced to old colorful Parley P. Pratt and then Ziba Peterson, which I don't know much about, but I do know Joseph Smith's mom, Lucy, said that these two individuals took this section very, very seriously, that they walked 1,000 miles because of this revelation that was given to them.
I love verse 3 though. And I myself, Jesus Christ is saying, and I myself will go with them and be in their midst. I mean, that's like, wow, good. Because we need you. It's like, I always, here's a thought I've always had. I love Jeffrey R. Holland. I'm a big fan of Jeffrey R. Holland. And so I've always wondered, like, you'll hear some kind of rhetoric from some kind of anti something or this or that. And I always thought, man, if I could approach this guy, not just with someone, if I could like bring someone along, I was like, let me get Jeffrey R. Holland in here. Let's talk to this guy. But, to know that Jesus Christ is saying, hey, I'm going to be with you. I mean, that's got to be a big relief. I mean, especially like we're talking about, this is early on. These guys, I don't know that it may be a fair assumption to say that where we sit now with all the knowledge we have, obviously more revelation has come to pass. We probably know more than they did at this point. I mean, early on.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I don't want to make that sound like a derogatory, like, oh, I'm tearing.
We have so many more resources.
Yeah, right.
We have
and
Google.
So, exactly. And so that had to be frightening, but what they did have was some very powerful spiritual experiences and stuff. Some of these backstories for some of these people was like, that's a little out of the ordinary. It's pretty cool. It's really strong. And so they do have that, obviously, but to know that the Lord's going to be with them, that had to be very comforting. It would be to me. I'd be like, oh, good.
Well, they held on to it for sure. That's,
yeah.
That's why stories about wintertime up there in your stomping grounds, they were teaching the Lamanites trying to eat bread and all they can eat was the crust because it was so frozen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, just a lot of they weren't in a heating or air conditioned building.
Yeah, right.
They were walking
Midwest
cars.
is miserable in the winter. I'll say that as a proud Midwesterner. I mean, it's so miserably cold and it's not even pretty with snow. It's ugly with ice. So that would have been like, well, I'll go in the spring. And here they are.
Right.
They're just heading out whenever.
Yeah.
So when I was 12 years old, I was asked to give my first talk by a member of the bishopric, and he asked me to give a talk on Parley P. Pratt. I didn't have a clue who Parley P. Pratt. I'm like,
and that's a pretty specific.
Exactly. And I'm like, so of course I will. And, and I go home and I'm trying to figure out who is Parley P. Pratt and how do I find out about him? Yeah. We didn't have Google back then, so I made the executive decision to give my talk on faith. I didn't give a talk on Parley P. Pratt.
You're pretty sure Parley P. Pratt probably had some faith at some point. That's how you incorporated that,
Wow. He was very colorful. He's very adventurous. He's actually the first missionary that we have a story about of a dog trying to attack him. Big old bulldog. He was got arrested.
Of course, it was a bulldog.
He got arrested, and long story short, Party's like, "Hey, I got to go. I got to preach the gospel." And the officer said, "Go get him, whatever." Stew Boy. I think the dog was Stew Boy, and the dog started chasing them and. There's more to it, but the dog ended up going into the forest and all. But it's the first recorded, documented. As missionaries, you all the time seeing.
So
dogs.
the first recorded dog. You had that. You said in your talk, but you didn't.
I mean, what's up, man?
Right.
That's right. Go dogs.
That's what the bishop. You should have called the bishop and say, "What would you like for me to say about Parley P. Pratt?"
And about his stew boy. So section 33.
33.
Ezra Thayre and Northrop Sweet.
Northrop Sweet.
Northrop Sweet, yeah.
Sounds like a really fancy cough drop.
Like a grandma candy.
Yeah.
Would you like a Northrop Sweet? No, Granny, it's been in your sweater for 3 years.
So Ezra,
okay, go ahead.
He built some mills, some dams, and I think some bridges. The Smiths had actually worked for him, and he was pleased with their work. Then he started hearing about they were beginning a new church, Golden Bible, just all these.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, who are these cats?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
What's going on here? Yeah.
But he does remember how good they work. So he actually goes, here's a sermon from Hiram Smith, and he felt like every word pierced his heart. Like it went towards him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, hey, man, I want to buy a Book of Mormon. So he ends up buying one. And he said as soon as he opened it, it was like he already felt the Spirit, but he felt double the Spirit when he opened up the Book of Mormon and changed his life. He ended up joining the church.
And he was actually pretty heavily. It took a good bit for him to agree to go and listen to Hiram preach. I think his brother had come down visiting and had heard him and everything.
From what I read, I think I read in the story or a little bit of history of him. Wasn't he in the meeting? Hiram was speaking. He was so overcome by the Spirit that he bowed his head down,
and tears,
and he did. And there was people he knew, so he just.
Right.
He was trying to hide it, and he said it was a long time before he could raise back up to where he wasn't emotional.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting, that he was really trying to whoa, I'm not supposed to be, I don't want to be getting into this. All my friends around or people I know over here.
Right.
Know?
And the significance of that to me is that because even he had other family members that, cause he went away for a little bit and then come back and heard that they were listening, and believing, and he scolded them. He says, "There's, don't go and listen to these people." And so that day he shows up to listen, and then he feels the Spirit that strong. Yeah. So a huge change,
and just changed his life. The Book of Mormon, and actually shortly after he had a vision or dream about how he saw a roll of paper and a trumpet, but he didn't know how to. To blow the trumpet or whatever.
What does he say? I've never done that before.
Yeah, never done that. That's right.
Yeah. So I think that's neat because we can all I've never done.
Yeah,
that
right.
before. Very for all of us. Yeah.
So section 33 was actually a revelation, given by Joseph Smith to them, and it talks about I believe it actually talks about somewhat blowing a trumpet, being like Nephi. Verse 2. Voices as with the sound of a trump to declare my gospel.
Oh, they use that a lot. They use that phrase "sound of a trump" a lot, and it's like, have you ever heard anyone blow on a trumpet or a trumpet? I guess or whatever. I mean, it's like whoa.
My brothers are trumpet players at my house growing up. Yeah,
it'll get your attention. It'll get your attention.
My daughter's trying to play right now.
Yeah. Trying to play is the best.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, but it gets your attention. I think that's, obviously this is what we're going for here, get people's attention.
So Parley P. Pratt actually baptized these two individuals. And Northrop, what's his name? Northrop.
However you say it's fine.
Yeah.
He did the dirt.
We know who we're talking about. Go for it.
He didn't last too long, but he actually was the first break off.
Yeah.
He started his
own. Church.
What was called?
The Pure Church of Christ.
Okay, a little more pure, right?
That's right.
This is the pure.
That's why there's so few numbers. There just weren't that many pure.
Yeah, it's really refined. It's a great sieve.
I like verse 5 in section 33. It says, "This church have I established and called out of the wilderness." Just kind of signifying disorganization. You think of living in the wilderness, you're all over the place and so forth. Whereas if you're in a town or a city, you're organized.
Speaks to you because you choose to live on a dirt road outside of the county limits on purpose. And I have to wash my car every time I leave after we record because of your dirt road. So this is why it speaks to you, Josh.
Exactly right. That's right. Absolutely.
You live in the wilderness on purpose.
I like it in the wilderness. That's right. Verse 8. How cool would that be to where it says, "And you shall become even as Nephi of old."
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool. If that's in my patriarchal blessing, right? Yeah. To be as Nephi of old or Moroni of old or something like that.
So it must have been, how these things are catered or personalized for these people. Perhaps he was very much into Nephi. He thought of Nephi a lot or something. So the Lord mentions that to him.
That's the section he's read over.
Yeah.
He didn't know who Alma was yet, but he's got Nephi.
He ain't got Alma yet, but he's only been a member 5 days. So it's like, I don't know, but you know what I mean? It's like he's letting him know, hey, that was perhaps when he read the Book of Mormon, that was something that really stuck out to him. So the Lord mentions it, and that's what I love about these things is the Lord. It's very personal. It's a very intimate thing, with the Lord. So it's pretty cool.
I wrote down here that a revelation the recipients choose not to obey is their responsibility. Sometimes we get our patriarchal blessings, we get counsel from a bishop, but it's up to us if we choose. It's our responsibility to to move forward with it.
Just because you got it in your pocket, it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Because these were promised. Was to them. Open your mouths like Nephi. They're trying to, give them an example of someone to follow. But then again, Northrop, Southrop, East, or whatever. Didn't follow too long.
Northrop went south.
Yeah. So on 34, we're talking about Orson, man. Brigham Young said something about Orson. He said, if you were to chop up Elder Pratt, talking about Orson Pratt, into each inch square pieces, each piece will cry out Mormonism is true.
Wow.
He was such a
kind of grotesque, but amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
another great quote by President Young.
You had to be living at that time. He was 18 when he heard about the gospel. Parley told it to him, his brother, but he joined, I think his 19th birthday, and ended up serving like 19 missions.
That's crazy.
Big, wrote a lot of, really helped out. Just gave some great sermons and different. Now he was excommunicated for a little bit, but we got to remember this is one thing we have to remember learning church history is you'll hear, well, so-and-so was excommunicated. So-and-so, well, it was so easy back then. It was like get excommunicated and then rebaptized right back. I mean, it was just little things.
It was a very different time.
Yeah.
It's not that doctrine was different. It was just that circumstances were different surrounding the doctrine. So it was a lot of new things, a lot of different things. So
I think we're more loving, not more loving. Now it's more
understanding.
You gotta try a little harder to get excommunicated.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, and my dad used to always say, the first step to returning to the gospel is excommunication.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
the first step back. And so I think anybody who has or will be, I don't know, I was having a conversation with someone recently concerned about excommunication status of someone else, which is a concern. But I was like, but if we truly believe in the atonement of Jesus Christ, all is made whole, right? And so that's just a blip on the radar.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's his blip, and we all have blips.
Oh,
Right.
for sure. And Orson Pratt was the first one that wrote down the first vision. He was a big part of writing that down and kind of
Very cool.
So
Thanks, Orson. You don't hear that name today much, do you?
I was thinking it sounds kind of like Gollum. Orson, Gollum,
Orson, get over here. Orson Redenbacher. No, that was Orville.
So Orson, again, going back to a different time, Orson was sent off at 11 years old to do a lot of working, to have, to help income for his family and everything. And they didn't really go to church anywhere, but he was encouraged. He had lots of questions. And so his parents encouraged him to turn to the Bible. He said, which just caused more questions and everything. And it's interesting how many people were looking for something greater during this time, whether it was a fully restored Church of Christ, or just answers to questions that other preachers or whatever couldn't give.
It was the Great Awakening.
That's right.
You know, the everyone hearts and minds were prepared.
That's right.
As we're about to find out in section 35 with Sidney Rigdon, Sidney Rigdon is near and dear to me because not just because he's in my family line, which I think is kind of crazy, but
little name drop there.
Yeah, a little name drop. Me and Sidney, like this. But I think of Sidney. We'll get into it here. One of the coolest things is verse 4 in section 35. It says, thou art blessed, for thou shalt do great things. Behold, thou was sent forth even as John to prepare the way before me. Talking about John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So Sidney Rigdon is compared to John the Baptist here, which Jesus Christ said was the greatest prophet that ever lived, basically. That was probably not the exact way that he said it, but he's thought very highly of John the Baptist. But for him to then say, Sidney, you are like John, preparing the way, you got to remember, and Andrew could tell you more about the history of Sidney Rigdon being a preacher. He was ordained a Baptist minister, right? I think Baptist minister or some kind of, I can't remember now.
Sydney?
Yeah,
Baptist.
Was it a Baptist?
Mm-hmm.
He already had big
wrong.
He actually go ahead.
I think it was Baptist,
but
I'm not sure. But anyway, he was ordained a Baptist minister or a minister, and not long, just 10 years before or something. I don't know, before he was baptized. It wasn't too long. But anyway, he had a congregation that followed him. He taught a lot of people the gospel. He baptized a lot of people without authority. Obviously, they didn't know that stuff. But when the missionaries came to Sidney and his congregation, there was many of them that joined the church easily. Not only did they easily accept baptism, but they were also pretty much right away ready for priesthood and for all the other things that they needed, because Sidney had prepared them with his preaching and talking about Jesus Christ. And they were looking for a New Testament type church. That's what he believed, that there should be a purer form of, Jesus Christ church or whatever.
Yeah, he was definitely. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So he's definitely the John the Baptist of Kirtland. He definitely needed this is what the church needed.
Right.
They only had a few people, and all of a sudden, bam, they get to Kirtland. The Sidney already prepared all these people. I think it was 127 that joined that.
Yeah.
And that's where the first temple was built, because that's where the people were at.
Right.
And you referenced this in the beginning. These missionaries were on the way to teach to the Lamanites or the Indians, and this is when they come across this congregation here.
That's right. They found success in their journey, not necessarily their destination. You can sometimes get disheartened. Like, why did it do this?
You're supposed to be on a certain road, and not necessarily the end.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was not phrased well. Pardon me.
But
you know what I meant. Thanks for joining that thought.
The Lord will help us accomplish things that He needs to have accomplished, not necessarily what we think we are accomplishing.
Right. That's right. If our desires are righteous,
that's right.
We'll see blessings that the Lord sees fit. So.
I like verse 18, and it's just a reminder that the work will move forward whether we are part of it or not. He says, and I have given unto him, speaking, this is revelation given to Sidney, and him is referring to Joseph Smith. And I've given unto him the keys of the mystery of those things which have been sealed, even things which were from the foundation of the world, and things which shall come from this time until the time of my coming, if he abide in me, and if not, another will I plant in his stead.
Right.
Which has got to be an interesting something for Sidney to hear. Like, wow, this is your prophet you're talking about here.
Yeah.
So
it just goes to show that nothing will stop it.
That's right.
No. And I always love that quote by, I think it was Wilford Woodruff, that said that, a prophet, a president of the church cannot lead the church astray. It will not happen. It cannot happen. The Lord will not allow it to happen. So that's what he said. He said, and Wilford Woodruff saying, he said, if I get up here and start to preach, doctrine contrary to what the church is, he said, I'll be removed out of my place. Like that, whatever that means, whatever the Lord decides. But in verse 22, he's talking to Sidney, right? And we know the story with Sidney Rigdon. We know what happens later. He didn't stay with the church. He got excommunicated. He pretty much would have been in line to be the next prophet of the church. He was in the first presidency. He was the first counselor, but was he the at the time? I can't remember if he had the seniority at the time. Did he have more seniority than Brigham Young? I think he did.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. But anyway, he was in. How it works, the way that it works now. Anyway, he would have been up there. I'm sure he could have easily became president if the Lord needed him to. But he fell away or whatever, and then started another whole section of actually a pretty good sized group, one of the Rigdonites or whatever they called themselves and whatever. Anyway, I love this though. In verse 22, the Lord tells him, he says, and now I say unto you, Sidney Rigdon, tarry with him, talking about Joseph Smith, and he shall journey with you. Forsake him not, and surely these things shall be fulfilled. He's telling Joseph Smith basically to tarry. He's telling Sidney Rigdon to tarry with Joseph Smith and don't forsake him, right? And this is what I found in the Institute manual. It says this. It says, Sidney Rigdon fulfilled the Lord's command to tarry with the prophet Joseph Smith until the prophet's martyrdom. He was the only counselor in the first presidency who served during the entire administration of the prophet. He was also the scribe for several of the revelations, some of which were received conjointly with Joseph Smith. He fulfilled the command to forsake him not when he endured the tarring and feathering at Hiram, Ohio in 1832 and suffered in Liberty Jail with the prophet during the winter of 1838-39. So he fulfilled this. He did not forsake Joseph Smith. And then of course after Joseph Smith died, that's when everything sort of went kind of askew. But I love that the Lord gave him that commandment and he kept it.
What verse was that? 22?
Verse 22.
What did it say?
He's saying, he said, and now I say unto you, tarry with him, and he shall journey with you, forsake him not. And surely these things shall be fulfilled.
Right.
So he did. He tarried with Joseph Smith, stayed with him the whole time, and he never forsook him.
And verse 19.
Forsook him.
Verse 19, the same thing. Wherefore watch over him that his faith fail not.
Yeah.
So
he did.
He provided as a companion
right.
to Joseph Smith.
He was there, man. He stayed there with him. So
and Sidney, you mentioned the tarred and feather. Joseph Smith was a large guy.
Right.
Sidney was kind of they said kind of a small stature guy.
And was he older? I can't remember.
I think he was. I'm not
sure either. But anyway,
I know Martin Harris was, but not Sidney.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about
either.
Sidney. But Sidney was a smaller guy, so Sidney lived in front of this house when they got tarred and feather middle of the night. Well, Joseph, it took 4 guys. Well, Sidney was just a small guy, so they grabbed him by his feet, and his head hit the steps.
Yeah,
and he passed out. Yeah, and he passed out, almost died.
Mm-hmm.
Was in bad condition, and they said ever since that he would have these migraines and just different things. So there's a lot of just background that
they talk like there was some mental issues. I don't know if you've seen the movie. What's it called? The Liberty Jail movie. It's not very old.
Liberty Jail.
Is it called Liberty Jail or something? Anyway, it's not too old of a movie. A few years, maybe. It sort of shows that when they're in Liberty Jail, Sidney's sort of kind of crazy. I mean, which obviously I'd be crazy too if I was stuck in a little tiny room where I couldn't even stand up all the way. But they talk like he had a lot of mental issues and things. Not saying that's an excuse or whatever. We don't know, but that's the point, is we don't know.
Well, I mean, it does play a big part of it. I mean, because you're mentally.
What I'm getting to is we can't judge him.
Yeah.
If I get to the celestial kingdom and I see Sidney there, I'm not gonna be like, hey, you ain't supposed to be here. I mean, what I'm saying?
Listen, we've got to have a list up here.
Yeah, of all the
Marcus's list.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of people.
We got Sid.
Everybody I want to meet. It's like.
Marcus isn't gonna judge.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man, this is if I see Sidney there, I might be kind of like, oh no.
No, we're all thinking if we see Marcus
but you are
there, we'll be
related to
real
him,
relieved.
That's right. Yeah.
You are related to him, right?
I am related, so hopefully I'll at least get to have a conversation with him. But I mean, like I say, we can't judge.
Well,
these
and like
people.
what I was saying earlier, what's the psychology behind? I love that we take mental health into consideration on all levels now, where we did not 50 years ago, 20 years ago. There's so much going on mentally of these people that I am so glad I'm not at the judgment bar making those choices.
I'm telling you right now, there's no way. No two people are alike. No two people are alike. I don't care if you grew up in the same household.
Nor their circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's right off the bat. Very first verse of the Book of Mormon teaches us that when Nephi says, I, Nephi, haven't been born of goodly parents. Who were Nephi's brothers? Laman and Lemuel.
Head slap of the Book of Mormon.
Exactly. And so, you know what I mean?
Call them.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like, it doesn't, situations are very different for even if environments are the same. You know what I mean?
And we all have our agency too.
Exactly.
Our personal interpretation. We can hear.
And there's things like you say, there's mental issues, there's environments, there's situations, there's whatever. I mean, there's so much to take. There's no way that when the Lord says we shouldn't judge, it's because we can't. We cannot judge.
We look at our past year of the pandemic and how one of the biggest issues we had was people struggled with their mental health. And that was just 1 year of being told to stay home. I can't imagine the mental health of these people being killed, driven out of their eating terrible food they grew in their backyard, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, just there's so many things that we take for granted in these stories.
Yep.
Go
ahead.
I was going to mention in the conversion process, Sidney had a conversation with his wife, and getting back to what Heidi has alluded to, and supporting your husband or wife. But Sidney said to his wife Phoebe, "My dear, you have once followed me into poverty. Are you again willing to do the same?" And she said, "I have weighed the matter. I have contemplated the circumstances in which we may be placed. I have counted the cost, and I am perfectly satisfied to follow you. Yea, it is my desire to do the will of God, come life or come death." So that's pretty powerful too.
Heavy. Pretty heavy. And it's true. He lost his congregation. The house that they built for him, didn't it mention that in there? Didn't the congregation build him a house because he was the minister or whatever? Right. And they would not let them live there after Sidney decided to join. The ones that did not decide to join, obviously. they said, nope, you're not even, we want you out of here. And so they had to leave. So now no income whatsoever, for being a minister or whatever it is, nothing. So that's what he was saying. It's like, are you ready to go back to poverty? And absolutely nothing. But,
and I think there's so much we can learn from that as we see people join the church today. I think people in this town have joined the church and had to give up family relationships. Like my husband, his family was not supportive of him joining the church. He had an uncle that tried to take him. So he joined the church when he was 19, left on his mission when he was 20, had an uncle right before he left on his mission to South America, tried to get him to sign up to join the army. He was like, if you want to see the world, join the army.
Right. Yeah.
Just the concept of him joining the church was, and changing his life for good was so foreign to these people. So I feel like that's so relatable for people who really have to give up the lifestyle, the culture they grew up in, and a lot of times the family that supported them. That's why Jackson and his family had to deal with my husband so much. My own husband's family didn't want him around, so he hung out with your family.
And our family, everything.
He was on everyone. I've heard from so many people, like your husband would just show up on our front door. And I'm grateful for that. Thank you for letting this person who was rejected by his family have a new family.
So I left on my mission before he did. Not long. I think he left in October. I left in like March or something. And I get pictures in the mail of him at my house, on the phone, talking on the phone, sitting on the couch, and I'm like, no, Albie's there. Like, here's all my friends are there.
He was out. For clarify, he was Albie back then.
Yeah.
Albert Thomas Simpson is his name.
Yeah, right.
Everyone who knows knows.
I'm sorry. So Thomas. But and so that's why I was like, he was with us. He was with Jackson's family. I was going to say with Andrew's family. Probably
he come up because my dad was the bishop.
That's true. That's true.
I'm sure all of y'all are like, gosh, that guy.
I know you wanted to come over and sing all these country songs while I played the guitar. Well, let's do some
stars. To the Thomas episode. So now,
are we prepared to be those people for the people that need it?
Exactly.
Honestly, when people knock on my door, I cringe. When the census person came around this past summer, I hid in my garage. I'm like, I just don't want to talk to anyone today. And I would not put it past myself to do that to a ward member.
Well,
I've said it.
What would have been the outcome if it had been different? If no one had
nurtured my husband, I would not be here today
doing this podcast.
Being that cold, cold, wet snow in Kansas City.
The ice of Kansas City, Missouri.
Exactly.
I will say this as well, though. As far as nurturing those that come into the gospel, we have to reach out. But at the same time, Thomas, he infiltrated isn't the right word, but he put
feels
himself
like infiltration.
Yeah, I mean, literally, he would again just show up at your house and stuff. So he involved himself. He went in.
And he was all
in.
I mean, when he got baptized, it was wide open.
That's right.
It was like, okay, because I knew him before he was baptized, and so as a matter of fact,
loser, you can say.
I mean, yes, no,
he's not gonna listen.
Not that he was just not really a loser. It's more of a very popular guy. Very, he's just. I just didn't think of him being he joined the church. Actually, as a matter of fact, when I seen him at church, I was thinking, why is he here? Like, what's going on? Like, how did this I was trying to make a connection, and then find out with Charlie and I think Troy and some other, that had
Heather was the first.
Heather. Okay. That's right. I remember
they were at Applebee's and Heather been getting married in the temple, and Thomas is like, being the jerk that he is, I'm going to prove this lady wrong.
Yeah, right.
And look who won.
Yeah, exactly.
Heather and me. I won.
That's right. Absolutely.
Not to go off topic, but I just felt like
support is big.
Are we going to be the people that support these people that give everything up?
Even with Sidney, I mean, he needed that support. If they did not give it to him, if he had not found it in the church, fellowship's huge. As a matter of fact, there's one thing I wanted to mention way back in 30. I'm not trying to backtrack here, but there was one thing I loved. I think it was when the Lord was talking to John Whitmer, because he was talking to three of them there, right? I think John. Yeah, John Whitmer. And he says, and your labor shall be at your brother Philip Burrows, and in that region round about. Yea, it goes on. But he's saying that I need you to go preach the gospel in the neighborhood, or be over at your brother, or at brother Philip Burrows' place. And here's what's cool about this. It says, after the church conference in September 1830, the Lord commanded John to go forth and labor in his work, beginning in the area where Philip Burrows lived in Seneca Falls, New York, not far from the Whitmer family. Just a couple of weeks before this revelation was received, Parley P. Pratt had preached a sermon to a group who had gathered at Philip Burrows' home. And some of the people were converted. Though Philip Burrows is referred to as brother in the Doctrine and Covenants 30:10, there is no record of him ever becoming a member of the church. His wife, however, was baptized. And it made me think, talking about support and loving people, and, this man perhaps wasn't even a member of the church, member of the church, and we call each other brother, sister, because we're members of the church, right? But the Lord is calling him brother, you know what I mean? And he's not possibly a member of the church. So everyone should be considered our brothers and sisters. Cool. I think of that, supporting others and helping others and being kind to others and loving others. It doesn't matter what your status is. I don't care if you're a member of the Baptist church or Methodist church or whatever. Everyone is our brother and sister and deserves that kind of kindness and love and respect. And so I just think that's a very interesting tiny little thing there. The Lord calls him Brother Philip Burrows, and
that's cool.
So it's kind of cool,
So Sidney's friend, Edward Partridge, there in section 36, this revelation is given to him. And he was actually kind of refuses the Book of Mormon at first. He didn't really want I was kind of hesitant, which many people probably was at the time.
Yeah, right.
But he took it later, and he partially believed it first until he met the prophet. And then when he met the prophet,
he actually said, if I meet him and he baptized, didn't he baptize?
Yeah. Joseph baptized
him. His wife went ahead and joined, I think.
That's right. Yeah. And he ended up being the first bishop of the church. We'll learn that in section 41. But
I read a lot about him in the Saints book.
Fascinating.
Oh man, this guy's awesome. He's super stand-up dude. And all I can think about Edward Partridge, every time I hear that name, I think of stake president or something of that nature, like you knew he was a leader. He's a very good leader.
Right. I was thinking of a family singing in a bus. Did you guys ever watch Partridge Family? Every time I think it. No.
So he actually gave himself up. He actually gave himself up in Missouri to kind of free some of the Mormons at the time. Right. He said, "I'll be tarred and feathered." He gave himself up to be tarred and feathered, so some could had their freedom that day or something. We'll learn more as time goes on about that. But like Mark said, just a great guy.
Here we are fighting about nursery snacks, and he's like, exactly. I will be the tarred and feathered person, and it's going to be okay. It gives a lot of perspective. What are the things we nitpick over in the church?
Yeah.
The one in verse 36, there was I like verse 2, and I will lay my hand upon you by the hand of my servant Sidney Rigdon. So when we have the laying on of hands of any kind of thing, if it's done properly through the proper authority, it's the same as having the Lord's hands placed upon us. But also the other thing I love is verse 6, because it really, I was like, the very last part, it says, hating even the garments spotted with flesh. I thought, okay, what's this all about? But I had to look that up, and it says that Joseph Fielding Smith explained it. He said it's symbolic language, obviously. He said this is a wicked generation walking in spiritual darkness, and the punishment for sin is spoken of as punishment in fire. Garments spotted with flesh are garments defiled by the practices of carnal desires and disobedience to the commandments of God. So obviously it's just some different language there to get the point across, I guess, in a weird way.
Another way of saying you're sinning.
Basically.
The sinners.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, so the section, in all these sections, urgency to repent. And basically we learned that holding the priesthood as you're responsible to preach. Mm-hmm. You don't actually have to get that mission call to go preach, to be an example. I mean, when you hold the priesthood and you are responsible to preach, and you should not, in verse 3, and you shall declare it with a loud voice, saying, Hosanna, blessed be the name of the most high God.
Yeah. There's a great, I wish I can remember the title. It's President Henry B. Eyring. I should have had it in here. A Voice of Warning, I think is what it's called, 1998 or somewhere. General Conference, super good talk. It's the talk where he talks about the family that he knew when he was younger that lived in California, a man that he worked with or he worked for. I can't remember, something like that. He said he's possibly Henry B. Eyring said, he said, I was possibly the only Latter-day Saint in his life that he knew or something.
I listened to this last week. So
yeah,
I totally listened to this last week.
It's
I've got it right here.
Powerful talk. And I mean, the language that he uses in that really can make you go, hello, wake up. And here's a little excerpt I had to pull from it. It says, at some moment in the world to come, everyone you will ever meet will know what you know now. He says, they will know that the only way to live forever in association with our families and the presence of our Heavenly Father and his Son, Jesus Christ, was to choose to enter into the gate by baptism at the hands of those with authority from God. They will know that the only way families can be together forever is to accept and keep sacred covenants offered in the temples of God on this earth. And they will know that you knew, and they will remember whether you offered them what someone had offered you. It's pretty powerful.
I was on my mission.
Yeah.
You and I both were on our mission when he gave that talk. And that's one of those talks that for me, that has stuck with me. And you remember exactly where you were and hearing that talk. Powerful. It was a very, very powerful talk.
And he's a very emotional person when he speaks, Henry B. Eyring, and which just puts more power to it to me with the way he said it. But that guy the guy from California, him and his wife were killed in an automobile accident. And that's what made him think of that. Like, why didn't I ever mention the gospel to them? That was a missed opportunity. And he said he's pretty sure that will be something that's addressed in the next life. And
don't worry, we'll cover it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, wow, here we go.
Yeah.
I doubt that man's going to come up to me, hey, man, what's wrong with you? I mean, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? But
knowing you're so close yet so far sometimes.
Exactly.
Well,
so never be afraid to open your mouth. OYM is what we called it in our mission. Right, Did y'all have that, OYM?
Yeah.
One of the talks that was linked to the lesson, and I can't find it, but I took a picture of what I wanted to talk about by Reina Abuerto. I'm sorry, I said that so horribly, but she is the sister. She was talking about it's from the most recent conference, October 2008. I'm sorry, but she's the best way to be a missionary is begin by being a good neighbor and a good friend. Set an example of righteousness and kindness. Let your smile radiate love, peace, and happiness. Live a gospel-centered life. Because one of my things when I want to be a missionary, I rarely bring up in our first conversation my religious affiliation. It doesn't come up naturally. I'm not going to bring it up because I feel like a lot of people already have a preconceived notion about members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I've seen people flinch when I mention in the past what I believe. Right. But one of my goals is to be almost like, I want you to see that I am likable and I live a good life. And from there, once that seed is planted, I will mention the gospel. I'll mention it a lot. I'm not afraid to talk about it. No, right. But I feel like I almost need to say, get past whatever they've decided about the church and have them like me anyway.
To see you.
It's sad that we have that we have that feeling.
Right. I know, because I'm very bold when I talk about it.
It makes total sense though what you're saying, because going back to, I can't remember what Andrew said earlier, can't remember which one it was, but someone, remember you said that they listened to the church, or they decided to look into the church because they knew that they were hard workers.
Yeah, Ezra
Thayre.
Yeah. He knew Smith.
That's the character of the individual. Right. Exactly. There's a great video out right now. She is it's the young lady that's like the hairdresser or not the hairdresser. What is she? The assistant.
Callie Ann. She was just baptized. Yes. Pink hair in the video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what a great video.
She's friends with Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade. Yeah. And she become baptized. But the reason that she decided to get into the church is because of her friend that was a member of the church that she had no idea was a member of the church. She just knew that he was different. He didn't drink at parties. He was always happy. He always talked about his family. These things intrigued her. It was never that he said, oh, have you heard of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? It was just the way that he lived, and she noticed it. And that's what drew her in. So when he said, well, here's the Book of Mormon, she decided to read the Book of Mormon and to dive into it because of the character of her friend.
Yeah.
She had nothing else to go on, but that was enough. And so when we talk about I want people to know us better and to see our character, how we are, that we're good, we're kind, we work hard, whatever, all those great things.
Regular.
That is
regular people.
Yeah, just should be regular people, right? Yeah.
Right.
But if we're that, that is preaching the gospel in a way.
And people respond to love.
Absolutely.
And she didn't probably
genuine
at the time realize this was a really loving person, and that's what set him apart.
Yeah.
And people respond to that.
That's right.
Yeah.
They don't respond to getting yelled at in the parking lot. That tried that one.
Yeah,
weird. It's a
Mm.
weird ending.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. Episode 65 in the books. We'll see you next time. And until then, y'all keep on striving.